All right, we are back with another edition of the Osceola Seminoles Sidelines, and I am Pat Burnham, recruiting and football analyst for the Osceola and Rivals, and I'm joined by senior writer Kurt Weiler. And Kurt, it was seems like it's been 3 months since last Friday, but it was a very, very busy weekend for Florida State head coach Mike Norvell and his staff as they hosted 4 camps in 5 days. Starting with last Wednesday's 7-on-7 and big man camp. And then, of course, we had the quarterback camp on Friday. Got some good news coming out of that. The elite camp was exceptional, a ton of high-profile prospects. And then yesterday had the mega camp where a couple of kids, at least 2 that we know of, were offered. There were some other kids that certainly have shown up on Florida State's radar. We'll get into a little bit of that later. But where we need to start, we're going to start with today. And Florida State, there are no off days in June for Florida State staff or the Osceola staff, as we are now joined by Osceola publisher Jerry Cutts, who's actually all dressed up today, Jerry. He wore collars and everything. Anyway, but they are hosting 2 kids on official visits this weekend. Cornerback Kai Bates, 3-year star or 4-star guy, depending on what service you look at. He's from Orlando Edgewater High School. He's been to Alabama and to Ohio State in the last 2 weeks. And then Jamar Grimsley from Tampa Catholic High School, who played at Bloomingdale High School last year. He's being recruited as an athlete. He was at North Carolina last week and has official visits at Alabama, Penn State, Michigan set up, as well as Florida State. So those guys are arriving on campus today. Just to give you our thoughts on Bates, I think he's a tremendous prospect, has great feet, can flip his hips, turn and run, very good ball skills is what you're looking for in a cornerback. And then Grimsley is a very good athlete. I think Florida State's recruited him as a safety prospect that could potentially turn into one of those hybrid safety linebackers that you're starting to see colleges use to defend the 3 and 4 wide receiver RPO offenses. If you go watch Grimsley's highlight tape, most of it's going to be at wide receiver, but you do see some physicality when he's lined up on defense. But both of those kids are on campus, Kai Bates and Jamar Grimsley. They'll be on campus through Wednesday, and we are going to try to catch both of them as they leave from their official visits on Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, and hope to have updates from both those guys on their visits. But Kurt and Jerry, we had a very hot and long day on Friday at quarterback camp, where you had about probably 75 to 80 quarterbacks stretching from 2025 to actually 2024 to 2027. And at least one offer has already come from that, and that went to Roman Seymour, a 6'5" and 192-pound rising sophomore from Manville, Texas High School. He is the son of former FSU defensive end Roland Seymour, so we got more legacies involved in FSU's recruiting classes. But Kurt, you and Jerry both saw him. Just give me your thoughts on Roman Seymour.
You talked about the impressive looking, but that definitely, it translates to how he plays too. It's not just physical stature. The zip he puts on the ball, especially for a guy who's got 3 more years of high school football to play, is impressive, and it looks pretty effortless too. It's definitely a smooth, clean release that he makes throwing the ball as hard and as far as he does look really easy. And it was, I think we all kind of pretty quickly, once we saw who he was and saw what he looked like, was like, oh, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets an offer today. And that happened right after I think the day ended. And I know you caught up with him after the visit. Impressive dude. He stuck around for the elite camp Saturday, and I think was maybe still the tallest quarterback of that bunch, even though he's one of the younger ones.
Yeah, I think he was one of the tallest. He was one of the biggest kids there for sure. Obviously, has offers from Texas A&M, Pitt, Houston. Was heading to Florida for their camp today or tomorrow. But yeah, listen, when you saw him, we kind of had an idea of who some of the top prospects would be in that camp. And certainly when you looked at number 40 just on the hoof before we knew what his name was, he looked the part. He's 6'5" at 15 years old. He's probably going to grow an inch or 2 more. But the ball really, once you start him throw the ball, knew right away that he had the best arm in camp. I mean, the ball just came out of his hand differently, as you said, effortlessly at the same time. But Jerry, just your thoughts on Roman Seymour. You've known his father for a long time, and obviously got a chance to speak with Roman on Saturday and watch it.
Yeah, it was, when you first walked up to that segment, I was, he popped off the page right away, even before you saw him throw. And then, of course, as Kurt and you both said, he really throws it well. So I did get to visit with his father a good bit on both days. And, for those who don't remember, Roland Seymour was a defensive end that played in that 96, 97 kind of time frame.
He was wearing his championship ring from '99. He stuck around that late. He was wearing his
championship ring on Saturday, didn't he? He did.
Yeah, you got to. I mean, when you come back with your kid, you've got to do that.
Yeah. So Roland certainly, he's a Seminole, and he was dreading going to Gainesville. And he said the only thing that, I've ever wanted to be in Gainesville was a good father. So I'm going to, he got invited to their camp, and so they're going to drive down there and see it. But Pat, the thing that they live in Houston. And so his roommate in college was Jerry Johnson. So they've been going over to College Station a lot over the years to watch football games and also to visit with Jerry. And he calls it FSU West because so many former FSU guys are on Jimbo's staff. They're very comfortable there, So, but I think his, maybe every parent's dream is that their son play where they played. So Florida State's very much in it. And he was very impressed with, they've been camping at College Station. It just never worked out to come here. But he was super impressed with what he saw while he was here, both the facilities and the coaching staff.
Yeah, and listen, there's a long way to go in his recruitment process. Listen, 40 yards last year. I know everybody's going to want to rush to see the huddle tape, and there's very little out there. He will be learning the position starting, obviously, from what we saw. I can't imagine that there's a better high school quarterback at his high school than him. I mean, he throws the ball like a college player. We talked to Roland, and Roland basically said that he almost refuses to throw with Roman anymore because he's tired. He hasn't put gloves on to do it because he's tired of his hands getting beaten up. And when you saw him throw those passes to the back of the end zone when they were working on that in that camp, you really saw his ability to throw the ball with velocity. And again, as Kurt has mentioned, it's not like he's had to extend a lot of effort to put a lot of velo, as the word is now these days, on the ball. And certainly I think we saw him put it, they had the net out in the middle of the field, and I think we saw him put two center mark. And so he had accuracy, he had athleticism. We didn't get a chance to see him run a whole lot, but you did get to see his footwork and all the drop back drills that they did. And it looks like an outstanding prospect. And I would imagine by the time he gets through doing the summer camp circuit, depending on how many, he's going to get offered everywhere he goes. Whether a committable offer or not, Roman Seymour is going to be offered about what he does in camp, because it's going to be hard to find somebody that does it as well as he does at his age with his lack of experience. So he was fun to watch. And, listen, we got a chance to talk to him. Seems like a great kid for a kid that young, handled himself very well in front of a bunch of strange men asking him questions about football camp. So, I give the kid props for that. I couldn't have done that at 15 years old. There's no doubt. Another couple of kids just that to pay attention to, Khalil Wright, who is a 2025 quarterback prospect from Charlotte Country Day. And just like Roman Seymour, Khalil has a great pedigree. His father was the starting quarterback at South Carolina. At the same time that I was a graduate assistant there, just so happens football is a small world. And also at the same time as current senior defensive analyst Shane Burnham was a linebacker at South Carolina. So his father, Anthony Wright, started at South Carolina for 3 years, went on to a 10-year NFL career. So there was some great pedigree at that camp on Friday. And he's a kid that I think Florida State's at least going to watch as he gets into his junior season. 6'1", about 180, and really an athletic kid, probably like his father, more comfortable in the pocket, but has the athleticism to be a dual threat guy, no doubt. But his father started games at Pittsburgh, Dallas, Baltimore. He played for 5 or 6 different teams in 10 years. And so Khalil Wright, 2025 from Charlotte Country Day would be another prospect from the quarterback camp that I think they'll at least go back and look at. We also saw Gavin Markey from Jefferson High School in Jefferson, Georgia, another 2025 prospect. He wasn't – I think he's a kid that they will at least go back and watch his film as a junior. And then we had another big 2026 kid, Landon Duckworth from Jacksonville, Alabama, who, like every other quarterback at this camp, had a Texas A&M offer already, and he's got several more. But he's another big kid, 6'4", 6'5". Wasn't as consistent as Marquis, Wright, or Seymour, but is very athletic, very young quarterback. And I think there's going to be another kid that Florida State will continue to keep tabs on as they move forward into the fall 2023 season. Then, guys, Saturday, we got the elite camp, and boy, there were stars all over the place at that camp. They did a great job. We know of at least 2 Georgia commits that were there, and Jaden Perlott and Elias Williams, the tight end. Perlott's an outside linebacker, defensive end type. But Kurt, ton of kids there. I'll let you start talking about some of the highlights, not only from the guys that were there, but some of the highlights from camp.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with somebody. I mean, looking at the bigger picture you talked about, I mean, the level of talent there. That's the difference a 10-win season makes. Because if you go back to that, I mean, that June elite camp the night before last year's mega camp, it was not quite the same crop. There were talented guys there, but top to bottom, I mean, not nearly as. I mean, I think it's where we're really starting to see the impact of the 10-win season, where, I mean, those top 2024 guys who are committed elsewhere, some really, really good 2025 guys are kind of giving Florida State real consideration, visiting campus, wanting to work out for the coaching staff, get to know the coaching staff better. But yeah, I mean, I think it was for me, I could start with talking about, I mean, it was a great chance for me to see some of the commits. I mean, I've seen some of them. I've seen Luke Kromenhoek throw quite a few times. Hadn't seen Tramel Jones, and I really liked what I saw from Tramel Jones. I think he threw a couple really nice deep balls. It helped, I think, him that he was throwing some to his high school teammate, Jamie French, the 5-star receiver in the 2025 class, who also looked really good. Cam Davis really impressed me. I mean, he's a guy, you look at him, and as stocky and muscular as he is, I mean, he is ripped to shreds. You would wonder if he's almost ripped to the point of, does it limit his mobility? And no, it does not. He cuts, moves. It's extraordinarily well. It's impressive to watch him. Another guy who I got to see, who I didn't get to see, was BJ Gibson, and I really liked what I saw from BJ. He I mean, the word Luke Kromenhoek uses the same word I use when talk about him. He's smooth. He runs routes well. He creates separation where it doesn't look like there's going to be any. He just found a way to consistently get open, run clean routes, make nice catches. He was a guy, I mean, I think when he became the 4th receiver of the class kind of in quick succession, 3 of them, it was kind of like, wow, this is a lot early to have 4 guys. But I think you see why the coaching staff took him there, showing maybe he will end up more important or higher ranked than his ranking at the moment would indicate.
Yeah, and listen, it was nice to hear that, obviously you want your quarterback happy with who he's throwing to. And like you said, he was very happy to see BJ. And then, of course, you had a couple other highly talented receivers there. JoJo Trader was there. Obviously, that's a big deal for Florida State because, his recruitment kind of goes back and forth. And it seems like Florida State has gotten more involved with him as time moves on. And then, of course, you had another impressive receiver. And I didn't get a chance to see him, Kurt, but you and Jerry might have Cam Coleman from Phoenix City Central High School in Alabama. We have him listed as 6 foot. He looks taller than 6 foot to me. Yeah. I have a feeling that's old information. Looks more like a 6'2" guy. Did you get a chance to see Cam or JoJo at all?
JoJo, I don't think was working out. I think his was more just a visit to be there. I mean, yeah, Cam look. I agree. He looks impressive, and I mean, he's a guy. I think we have him. Rivals has him rated as a 3-star. I think some other sources have him a little higher, but his offer list is. I mean, he has everybody and anybody you'd want. Pretty much everybody in the South. Bama wants him. LSU wants him. All the Florida schools want him, and he coming out of the visit after I think a good visit there, a good workout there, is coming back for an official visit. He kind of didn't indicate when, but he was kind of like he anticipates, and obviously it helps that you're not struck with 5 anymore. But he didn't know what game yet, but he wanted to come back for a game for official visit. He kind of asked us. He was like, "What's the best game?" And I told him Miami, so I'm thinking he might be back November 11th in Tallahassee for an official late in the season.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the best atmosphere they'll see next year on the home schedule for sure. And I believe, I think Elias Williams, the defensive end from Hudson, Florida, also had a impressive camp and set up an official visit for November 11th for that game as well. So we certainly, I know the defensive tackle, Danez White, don't think he has an offer yet, but I do think he's scheduled an official visit. I do not have the date, but Jerry, did you get it? I was obviously down there with the big guys, but did you get a chance to watch any of the skill guys at Elite Camp?
Yeah, that's what I was with Kurt. We were watching those guys, and the thing there was a lot of them. There were so many people. It was hard to watch them all.
Yeah, it is.
You're watching a receiver, and he's going against a defensive back who's also elite, and so it's. To me, it was kind of hard to separate them. There weren't people that just stood out. A couple of people did to me, but they all were extremely good. I think you could make a football team out of about any 22 of them. But Cam Davis stood out. He was the one guy that, to Kurt's point, I have a video that of him he was running a crossing route, about a 10-yard crossing route, and the ball was real high, and he went up and caught it very smoothly. And he just, like Kurt said, he is so muscular. I think, Pat, you call him Little Herschel.
I do call him Little Herschel.
And but he's fluid. He's so fluid. But yeah, there was a lot of people to watch, and it was, like I said, nobody really just jumped out at me, but you were working at such an elite level to begin with that the competition was great, and it was intense. That was the thing, my takeaway. The guys were really competing. They weren't just out there.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to see him, but everybody talked about Zaquan Patterson, the safety / linebacker prospect from Chaminade. Yeah, everybody talked about what a great day he had. The guys I talked to after camp. He's been up here several times now. I think he was here for 2 days. I could be wrong about that. I could be having it confused with somebody else. But listen, the amount of talent out there, as Jerry said. It's changed a lot since the first one. I didn't see last year's Elite Camp, but I did see the first year's Elite Camp. And obviously this was a much stronger pool. And as we've said all along, that's what 10 wins and the FSU logo do for you. And you can certainly see that. And Kurt, I know you're getting ready to say something. What?
Well, yeah, and you talk about it. The 2024 guys they're in on are great. The number of commits they had there is great. And how many of those guys seem, pretty locked in, especially the top guys. Landon Thomas was there again. We didn't mention him. I don't think he was working out much, but he was there around again. I think he's going to be back for his official visit later this month. I think a bigger deal was the number of, really highly rated, really good 2025 kids that they had on campus. Alvin Henderson is a 2025 running back from over in Alabama. I think less than 2 hours from Tallahassee, pretty close. I was looking up his stats yesterday. He ran for 2,600 yards, average over 200 yards a game and 47 touchdowns as a sophomore. Dude his huddle film is worth your time. And he's another guy who everybody wants him. And he was at Florida State. He wasn't working out, but he was there. He was visiting. He was wanting to spend his time there. I know you got to watch a few, and you can talk about the 2025 defensive linemen. But Jared Smith, Zion Grady are two guys who are both top 50 overall recruits in the 2025 class from Alabama, both defensive linemen, both at Florida State, working out, wanting to be around the coaching staff and all that. David Sanders Jr. was, I think he's the number 2 overall player of the 2025 class.
He's the number 2 overall player, number 1 in the state, number 1 at his position. To your point.
mountain of a man offensive tackle. He looks like ready to go now. Like if tomorrow they were like, you're playing right tackle, he could maybe hold his own. Like he is an impressive looking dude. And he was, I mean, it shows, I think, obviously closing goes into it. And it's a long game with a lot of these kids who are probably going to take their decisions down the road a while. But being able to get those kids on campus is a major step towards, I think, signing the type of, I mean, a Jimbo Fisher-esque class and bringing in a number of those top 50, top 100 kids and stacking talent like that.
Well, and it wasn't just like it was a 3-hour drive for David Sanders. He came in from Charlotte, North Carolina. I mean, he's got everybody in the country offering. He was a 5-star kid. 6'6", 255, and I heard somebody on FSU staff refer to him as the 8th wonder of the world. They like him. And then you had Jaden Perlott, ranked number 2 at his position for 2025, committed to Georgia. This is his 2nd or 3rd time on campus this year alone. Andrew Maddox from Oak Grove High School in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, number 1 rated defensive tackle at his position, 11th nationally. I mean, you go on and on with 2025s. And you even saw an unrated guy like Mario Nash, offensive lineman from DeKalb, Mississippi, came over, and he proved himself well. But, yeah, so the amount of talent, as I scroll back through the list of visitors, is just amazing. And, listen, it's certainly you don't very few times do you hear people talk about whatever Florida State does on their visits. It brings kids back. Jared Smith, Spain Park, Alabama, Birmingham, 2nd rated defensive end, and on my end of the field on Saturday, by far the best player. Unbelievable. Listen, and it's impressive that he decided to stay. He was around campus yesterday at Mega Camp, not participating, but just around the staff. We saw that there was some David Sanders, same way. He was around for the entire weekend, got to spend more time around the staff. So whatever they're doing, and we've heard kid after kid after kid compliment Florida State and its staff on the job that it does on these official and unofficial visit weekends. So, getting Trader in here 2024 was big. I know Derek Plies. I did not see him. I don't know if he was here or not, but looking at that, the big man, Jared Smith, I thought was one of the best players they've had on campus here lately. The coaches were raving about him. He stayed an extra day. That's big. And Grady was very impressive, 6'4", 220, highly rated kid himself, not quite as high as Jared, but certainly a guy that's got a lot of attention and was impressive in pass rush drills. You had Jalen Wiggins, the 2025 defensive end from Rickards High School here in Tallahassee. I thought, obviously you guys cannot offer an opinion because I don't think you saw him, but I thought he had a better elite camp than he did a big man camp, which he was at on Wednesday. And some guys step up to the level of competition they played against. He certainly did on Saturday, but he was fun to watch. And then, listen, we've talked about David Sanders. He's very impressive for where he is and growing into his body. Then Solomon Thomas, the kid from Jacksonville Range, 6'3", 280, great feet, really strong, powerful lower body. You didn't get to see him run block, obviously, because it was an unpadded camp, no helmets, but he showed great feet and pass protection. Then you had Jaden Todd, the offensive lineman from West Lawrence that everyone is kind of comparing to the kid they signed out of Key West last year, Chris Otto. We did talk to Jaden after. He is a guy that was a baseball player that's transitioning into football. He's 6'6", 300-something pounds. He held his own in what I saw. He did not get offered by Florida State, but I think that was more of Florida State wants to see how he develops moving forward into his senior year and gets more experience with the physicality of football and those kind of things. But it was, an impressive group of guys, and we could sit here for 3 or 4 hours if we wanted to go over every single one. But, those were some of the – Elias Williams, again, I mentioned him. He scheduled an official visit. Denaz White, the defensive tackle, has scheduled an official visit. But, yeah, listen, it was an impressive group of athletes out there. Isaiah Gibson, another 2025 defensive end, had a strong day, I thought. there was a lot more to like than there was not to like. I'll put it to you that way. You would definitely think that the title of the camp fit the bill this year, right? There were a lot of elite prospects, and listen, they did not just work them to death, right? I mean, it was a very quick workout, probably about less than an hour. They started a little early because of rain, but certainly did things like position meetings with these kids. I'm sure they did photo shoots. I haven't looked on Twitter to see the photo shoot pictures yet, but all the kids love that. And then I know at one point they were supposed to go over to the baseball stadium. I'm not sure if they ever got over that.
I think they did. One of the players talked about it. I forget what player talked about they got to freshen up their baseball game a bit. So I think it might have been Tramel Jones.
Okay, yeah. So they had my understanding was that somebody mentioned something about a home run derby. I'm sure I would think that would either be a Cam. I would put my money on Cam Davis or BJ Gibson in that thing, because I think those are the two guys that are coming as baseball players too. So, but anyway, it was a fun camp to work, and then of course we finished it all off with 900 campers at yesterday's 2-session mega camp. And listen, we saw kids get offered out of that camp, and we saw a lot of old Florida State guys at that camp. Rick Stockstill and his Middle Tennessee State staff were there. Lawrence Dawsey, who's down at Appalachian State, was there with some of the guys from the Appalachian State staff. Derek Gibson's at FAU now. We saw him there, and I know there's somebody I'm forgetting from the old days, but there were about 5 or 6 guys that played at Florida State that were there in some capacity as coaches. And it was a good camp, and we saw at least 2 offers come out of that camp. In the Chase Taylor, who actually got to see a lot at that camp. Chase Taylor's from Stockbridge, Georgia. He's a 2025 linebacker prospect, 6'3", 200 pounds. You notice him right away. They had in his group, he moved extremely well. Didn't know who. I just knew him by number, right? I had to find out what his name was. He was like linebacker 103 on his jersey. So I started trying to find out who linebacker 103 was, and it was Chase Taylor. And I knew I was looking at the right kid, because when they got finished with linebacker camp, or the first session of mega camp, linebacker coach Randy Shannon spent an extended amount of time with Chase and his family, and you just kind of felt like an offer was coming, and it was extended by Mike Norvell after camp. There's a picture, I think, in the story. If not, it's on his Twitter account. And then, of course, we're starting to see more and more 2026 guys pick up offers as they get ready to close out this 2024 class with this last 4-month run into December, 5-month run into December. But they offered Samari Matthews from Charlotte, or not from Charlotte, but from North Carolina, Huff High School. Watch his film. He's a good player. Obviously, we don't get into a whole lot of breakdown of 2026 kids yet on film. And then, of course, there are a couple of kids that we think Florida State may circle back to at some point. One of them that really saw a lot of Florida State coaches hanging around after he got through was San Francisco McGee from Macomb, Mississippi, 6'2", 188. He is a 2024 receiver. We know they're stacked at receiver for 2024. So a couple of things could be happening there. Obviously, he may have the ability to play both sides of the ball, or somebody that's committed at receiver right now may be a dual, may be a offensive, defensive guy. So be interesting to see how that pans out. And then, of course, a linebacker that caught my eye was Cornelius Bass from Orlando Edgewater High School, 6'1", 223. I believe there were a couple other linebackers, but I'm going to stop with Cornelius because, as I said, we could go all day about this if we wanted to. But Cornelius is a guy that plays defensive end at his high school, stand-up outside linebacker some, but plays with it. But he worked out with the FSU linebackers, or the linebacker prospects on Sunday, and really held well for himself. I think because of if his future's at linebacker, because he's more of a downhill inside linebacker type, which are becoming a rarer and rarer breed in college football. But I think what their hope is that he's transitioning to linebacker this year for his senior year. But those are two names to keep an eye on. We'll have more as we continue to break down our tape that we took at these and go through our notes. And it was 4 camps in 5 days, so we still got a lot of updates to go through. We'll have a lot more notes. And Charles Fishbein, our recruiting analyst, I don't know if he's put fish bids up yet from camp, but he will certainly share his thoughts. But I just want to get y'all's overall thoughts from Mega Camp and anybody that stood out to you guys.
Yeah, that was actually however many years they've been doing this first time out there. The last 2 times I think I've had FSU baseball conflicts as they've been in the postseason. It's pretty, it's a madhouse out there. It's pretty cool. Seeing I know you weren't tracking, we weren't really focused on, I guess, who other coaches from other schools are grabbing. Our focus will be there's more Florida State. But I think, the group of kids that are going to be Florida State or potentially Florida State caliber of that 900 plus is fairly small, but I'm sure there were quite a few kids who, they got that, whether an Albany State was there or maybe an FAU or a FAMU or the other in-town team. Marshall, Clint Trickett was there. That's the one you might have missed. You missed Clint Trickett, right?
Yeah. I did miss Clint
Marshall,
Trickett.
Former FSU quarterback, yeah. Marshall, offensive coordinator now. But yeah, it's a really impressive thing that Florida State does, and they're kind of using their brand and their power in the college football world for good. I think a name that's going to come up for Fish, he turned me on to Wilnerson Telemac is a 2025. He was working with a defensive lineman. He's from Monsignor Pace down in Opelika, Florida.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
And Fish will probably come up in Fish bits. Fish thinks he's a future offensive tackle. He's 6'6", 254, which for a 2025 kid is it's a frame that I think because he's an end right now. You think he might end up either a tackle on offensive line or defensive line, but was an impressive looking kid, moved pretty well and carried that weight pretty well for in his frame.
Yeah, there was a ton of coaches. And listen, I'm gonna tell you what, Indiana had about their whole staff there.
I missed Walt Bell. Apparently, he was there.
Yeah, he was there.
Old friend Walt Bell.
Still has very nice set of hair. Yeah, Walt has some of the best hair in college football, so he's still very stylish with his hairdo. But yeah, Tom Allen, the head coach from Indiana, was there. Rick Stock, got a chance to talk to Rick Stockstill. It's always great to catch up with him. And I'd ask him. I said, "Coach, how much are you going to do this?" And he goes, "They're going to have to get rid of me." He goes, "I'll coach until they take my whistle away." So it was fun to talk to Rick. I've known Rick personally since he brought his son to USF when I was running camps at USF. But it was fun to see Rick, and I asked him about that Miami win, and he goes, I was certainly excited for my kids and for Middle Tennessee, but he goes, there was a little bit of going back to 1970 or 1980 when he played. He got a little satisfaction, that's still a rivalry for him in his mind, no matter where he's coaching. But it was kind of fun to catch up with Rick. Called up with LD for a second. He's at App State now, and obviously had been at Florida State with Jimbo and with Coach Bowden, and I worked with LD at USF too. But he was at A&M a couple of years ago as an analyst, and then still hooked up with Appalachian State before the preseason. And Kurt's dog is having a good time back there.
He's just adjusting.
Anyway, so it was good to see LD. Of course, 900 kids. I do think it's great that Mike wants to do that for those kids and help those other colleges out. And obviously it gives Mike a chance to build relationships with those other coaches, and you don't ever know when you're going to be in need of an assistant coach. But it was kind of fun to see how some of those college coaches were very actively involved in like Indiana staff, and maybe that's why Tom Allen was there. Those guys were working. I saw some other coaches that were just kind of walking around the field like I was, but that Indiana staff was getting after it. And of course, there were several others, but it was kind of fun to see those guys. And I saw Reggie Johnson, the old Florida State tight end, was there, and we heard a fascinating story about where I guess Jerry, he is one of the official NFL uniform checkers for the Jags on Sunday, and we're not going to bore you with all of that. But it's just interesting to see how some of these guys are staying involved in football, even though some of them are not coaching. and some of them are. But anyway, did you get a chance to catch up with anybody, Jerry? Any of the old Florida State guys on Sunday?
Yeah, a couple of them. I was just thinking about Reggie Johnson when he came in as a freshman. Steve Ellis had worked it out where I would go through freshman testing with the incoming freshmen and do a story on it. And my partner was Reggie Johnson. So when he had to do his sit-ups and whatnot, I held his feet. And when I had to do mine, he held my feet. It was pretty funny.
So did you survive it?
I survived it. Actually won a 40 against one of our players.
Pat Tomberlin?
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, the kid didn't make it.
Well, I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure he didn't. If you beat him in the 40, even at that age.
Yeah, I was 31 or something at the time. But that was a shame.
Hey,
At any rate, he was a scholarship player too. But at any rate, Reggie was such a great guy. He was a lot of fun to just a happy guy and a hell of a football player. But yeah, it's just seeing those guys is so much fun. And, on a social note, they come back as fathers. That's the thing that, when you knew them when they were players here, they were kids, and now they're grown men. And some of them even have grandchildren now. So it's pretty interesting. Hey, I was going to say something, Pat, I didn't want to interrupt you, but, the 10-win season certainly helps. Absolutely. I think it probably paramount. But if you go back a couple of years ago, Mike had no relationships. His first year here, when I say none, he had very few from Florida. But, he got that COVID year. So his camps, there was no camps the first year. And then the second year, they had camps that they had no relationships built yet to get these people to come to the camps. So it was good to see that and I think they're maybe in their full stride. It'll get better, I'm sure. But that was the product of a 10-win season and really about 18 months of relationship building.
Yep.
And adding someone like Patrick Surtain, who's really tied in the state and has those ties. It is both. I think some pieces they've added, and like you said, they've done the legwork now that you can't kind of fake. It takes time.
Hey Pat, let me. You might remember this, and Kurt, but particularly Pat. It's just amazing how many prospects we're looking at. Back in the Bowden era, when Florida State was in its dynasty run, they may not recruit more than 100 kids. Some years maybe not more than 50. Because their hit rate was so high, they were like hand-picking kids. So to see as many kids and back then, football camps were different. They were, they had the select camp back then. But most of it was like a lot of little kids out there, right, Pat? It wasn't the level of talent.
Well, yeah, they didn't. There was like they had 2 3-day overnight camps, right? So It wasn't camps weren't specialized back in the 80s and 90s, or at least the early part of the 90s. But back in 1985 and 86 and 87, when I was going to high school football camps, you had the high school kids were separated from the elementary school kids and junior middle school kids. And obviously, I remember Wayne McDuffie beating the living crap out of me for 3 days because he would not let me go work with. But it was physical, probably more physical in those old days, but it was not as specialized. And, you didn't have elite camps back then. You might, those kids came with their coaches and came with their teammates. And you mentioned how much, you didn't have access to all this information back then either, where now you can get huddle highlights and get in touch with kids from across the country on Twitter and social media. So I think that's changed. The pool has gotten bigger. Now everybody's games are nationally televised. So recruiting's gone from it's still majority regionally based, but you see we're seeing kids from California and Arizona that are highly involved and signed with Florida State. Nicholson, the linebacker, Blake, who we saw yesterday at camp, and looks really good. Looks like he stayed is in tremendous shape. We'll see how he adjusts to this Tallahassee humidity as they go through these June workouts. But
we're talking to him this week.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. That we should ask him about the humidity when we talk to him. That always catches some of these guys off. But you got Christian Clark, who Florida State from the running back from Arizona, who's been already here for his official visit, and Florida State's right in the thick of it. Where probably 8 weeks ago, I'm not sure people thought they would be in there because it looked like USC and Texas and Georgia, but Florida State's still in there. So I think there's a number of reasons why it's changed.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But listen, there and if they, but to your point, if they start racking up some of these 10-win seasons back to back to back, you're going to be back to being able to be very selective. And I do think we are starting to already see that at some positions. I think there are some positions that they're going to be able to say, hey, looks like they're really doing well at wide receiver, doing really well at running back. Some other positions that maybe a little bit more not quite there yet, but with Mike's offense, I think you're starting to see people take notice that, after he did what you always question, will that the success at Memphis and his offensive system translate to Florida State? And it certainly has, and will probably be even more explosive than the offenses he's had at Memphis because he's going to have access to better athletes, better football players. So, I think we've already seen where they are getting a little bit more selective. Are they back to the days where they say, well, we're going to take 25 of these 60 kids, and we know we got a great shot at getting all 60 of them if we wanted them. I think there's also the factor that we got to look at is the NIL is going to factor into some of these battles as we continue to see how that affects recruiting and how it's done. And we can talk more about that later, but yeah, you're right. I think they are getting back to where most Florida State fans are used to with Florida State recruiting, and we saw that as Kurt mentioned before, in the 2025 guys that were here on Saturday. We had at least 3 guys, and there's more. I can't think off the top. There were 50 guys here at least. We know at least 3 of them were either ranked number 1 or number 2 at their position for 2025. Nationally. So we are starting to see the crop become, greener. I don't know what for whatever reason, but yeah. And I think we just lost Jerry. Jerry, you want to come back in and join us?
His video froze.
His video freeze. There he is.
There you are. You're back. Yeah.
Listen, I think
the whole time listening.
But yeah, I think we are already starting to see where they're more involved with. For lack of a better term, the 5-star players, the top players in the nation. And it's hats off to them. They work really, really, really hard at recruiting.
It is they put they put in the hours and hours and hours of work. I'm always in awe of the hours coaches have, but they definitely, I think, take that to the max.
Yeah. Well, listen, I've seen FSU coaches tweeted. I've heard my brother say it a million times since he's been in college football. Hard work works, and and you can certainly that certainly has translated to FSU's recruiting efforts. There's no doubt about that because we've been there every step of the way for everything they've done since January, and when the season came to an end and recruiting really came to the forefront of what was going on in college football, and they have I know we sat out there going, God, are they ever going to take a day off? And, they will, but it won't be until July or June 25th when the calendar goes dead. But anyway, one other update, and Kurt and I saw it on Saturday or Sunday at some point. Charles Lester, the defensive back prospect from South Florida, took an official visit to Colorado and kind of put out a cryptic tweet. As you guys all know, Deion's saying is we're coming or we coming. I don't remember which of the two it is, but Charles Lester had put out a tweet on Saturday night, "I'm coming," which kind of you can read into that, and I did. I was like, "Well, is that guy committing?" Well, he did not commit, as far as I know it to be, but he did feel like he needed to put out a new tweet about basically doubling down that he is coming to Florida State this weekend. So Kurt was probably right on that in our little text discussion on that tweet, but looks like Lester is not committed.
No, he seems like he's from by all notions seems like a guy who kind of plays the recruiting game well.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like talked a few times after Florida State visit about like I almost committed. He
Yep.
likes to tease a little bit, it seems like, and definitely try and build interest in his recruitment with stuff like that. And let's be real, Deion was probably in his ear a lot this weekend about if he really wants to take that Florida State visit.
Yeah, well, Deion's he's Coach Prime. I wonder if they call him Coach Prime. Like that would be hard for me to do.
Yeah, it's true. I shouldn't call him Deion. He would chew me out for that. Remember that video from back when he was in Jackson State?
Yes,
early in the tenure, he'd shoot out the reporter.
He compared himself to Nick Saban.
I think you're right. Yeah. Well, they are in the Geico commercials together.
Well, that's about the only thing they have. So listen. Deion's a very knowledgeable football man, but he does not.
It's
have listen, and I don't. I call all of them coach when I'm in their building. Other than that, I call them their names.
Yep.
But although I probably would call Coach Saban, even if I saw him out at a restaurant. I don't think I call him Nick.
Yeah, I think if it were someone on a beat I wasn't covering, I might go Coach fill in the blank. I'll normally say, "Hey, Mike," if I see Norvell, out at whatever, and he talks to me.
Now I do have a hard time calling people that are younger than I am coach. Like, I think it's.
I think that's fair.
I watch all these 30-year-olds running around. I'm like, listen, when I'm on their property, I call them all coach, right? I mean, I call them all coach when I'm on their property.
I said they do Geico commercials. Save your tweets, people. It's Affleck. I know. I messed up. I said the wrong thing. It's Affleck. Don't tweet at me, please.
All right. Yeah. Well,
the duck.
It's the duck. Well, listen, it's going to be a busy. We're gonna have about 12 hours to rest and relax before it gets cranked back up. We'll be back Wednesday in some form or in some capacity. We'll have a group together, whether it's Fish, me, Kurt, Bob. That all remains to be seen. But they will have camps on Wednesday. We have a kicking camp. We are anticipating that 2024 commit Jake Weinberg will be there. So it'll be fun to watch him kick, since I have not seen him. And we'll see if they find anybody for 2025 or 2026 out of that camp. And they will have another individual camp on Wednesday afternoon from 4 to about 6. Do not have any expected names for that camp right now. We'll obviously try to go to, if we have those will be on the Osceola message board, premium recruiting message board, once we get those and learn who's coming. But if you're not an Osceola subscriber and listen to either this video cast or the podcast version of Seminoles Sidelines, please go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com. That'll get you to the same place. Please check us out. We got some free recruiting content from this weekend on there. Some of it's behind the paywall, but you do have a chance to get on our premium recruiting board, look at the notes and the videos from that. We took a ton of video from Elite Camp on Saturday. If you want to see any of that video, you have to subscribe to the Osceola, go to the premium recruiting board, and go to our live thread from Saturday. But we got a lot of great video. We spent a lot of time working that live thread for you guys. So we hope that you'll go to our premium recruiting board, pull up that live thread from Saturday, and check out the film. We've got a ton of film from the quarterback camp through our Twitter pages. I'm at Osceola Pat. Kurt, you're at Kurt Weiler, right?
Kurt M. Weiler.
Kurt M. Weiler. So we got a ton of video from quarterback camp, elite camp, and of course we got the article on mega camp, and then of course we've done feature articles on several players, including Luke Cromenhawk, Cam Coleman, Jaden Todd, both Elias Williams, the defensive end Elias Williams from Hudson and the tight end Elias Williams from Georgia. We've got individual one-on-one articles with them as they left elite camp. We will be back Wednesday at 12:30. For Kurt Weiler and Jerry Cutts, my name is Pat Burnham with the Osceola Seminoles Sidelines, and we'll be back Wednesday.